Hey everyone, welcome back to Engelbart Gaming. Yes, it's another episode of Complete Trash. I'm sorry, I'm working on a really big video, I promise, and it'll be ready next time, probably next week. But for now, to make up for it, here's a look at the complete game of Sega Master System Shadow Dancer. And whoo boy is this one interesting. First up, this is the arcade game you're looking at right now. Of course, it was released on Sega's System 18 board, which is kinda similar power-wise to Capcom's CPS-1. Shadow Dancer was the follow-up to Shinobi, even though Sega often balked at calling it a sequel. But really, it was. The only problem is, it was a worse game than Shinobi in just about every way, except maybe the graphics. It looked great, but the music is often dull, the game is slower, and it's much harder than Shinobi. It also just isn't as much fun. It's not bad or anything. But, it was just okay, which was kind of disappointing since Shinobi was awesome. Speaking of awesome, the Genesis got an awesome version of Shadow Dancer that was mostly original, just borrowing a setting or two and a few elements from the arcade game. And Genesis Shadow Dancer is the better game. But did you know that the Sega Master System also got a version of Shadow Dancer? And guess what? It's actually a port of the arcade game. SMS Shadow Dancer was released in 1991. It was, I think, developed by Sega of Japan, judging by the credits, but it was only released in Europe and Brazil. And while this is a port of the arcade game, it's severely cut down. It does have all 4 missions from the arcade game, but on the Sega Master System version, each one of those missions only has 1 level. So each mission consists of 1 level and then the boss fight. And in the end, this is a 10-minute game, folks. Before I jump into showing you the game, I'll let you know that SMS Shadow Dancer looks pretty amazing for the system, and it even sounds pretty good, replicating some of the arcade game's music. But it wouldn't be a complete trash video unless something had gone horribly wrong, right? The gameplay is absolutely awful. It's insanely difficult, and is about as much fun as grabbing a pair of pliers and ripping one of your toes off. But hey, I soldiered through it to show you just how simultaneously bad and impressive it is. For recording methodology, well, I got good for the most part. I did some safety save states, but if I remember right, I only loaded state twice during this entire run. See if you can guess where in the comments. Alright, let's get on with it. And here we go with the opening animation. Not too bad, right? When they replicated sort of the opening of the arcade game here, looks pretty impressive. At least considering the limitations of the little 8-bit Sega Master System. Anyway, let's get this show on the road, shall we? And hey, we've even got that sort of arcade opening there. We see the map, even though there's only 1 level per area. And here we are, and just look at this. Your character is huge by Sega Master System standards. But the problem is, see those knives coming at you? And those bullets? If you don't know they're there, you will get hit because they're fast and you're kind of stuck in your position at the screen there. And the game adds this fire on the floor to give you something to do, because otherwise it would just be a straight walk from left to right. They've removed a lot of elements from the arcade game, as you can tell here already. It does have the close quarters attacks, but they're a lot harder to use. They got rid of the power-ups for the stars, but they're not really useful in this game anyway. They wouldn't have been. And, they got rid of sort of the punching it looks like for close quarters attacks. At least I haven't seen it in any of my playthroughs on this, and I've done several now. We had some nice parallax on the plane back there, if you didn't notice. Some faux parallax. And that looked pretty good, too. And here, even the bombs you disarm, they don't show up until you kill an enemy and they're sitting underneath them. Now, one thing you may be noticing here is, hey, there's no dog. But the dog actually is mostly in the game. And I'll talk about him in the next level, because we're getting ready to go into the boss fight now. So that's stage 1, which replicates the very first mission and first level of the arcade game. Now here's our first boss, which again is similar to the boss from the arcade version. And again, he's gigantic. This, on a technical level alone, is really impressive. Now, one thing you've got to do to really play this game well is you got to learn the controls and some of the idiosyncrasies, such as if you jump and then press a direction, you move very slowly. Anyway, check this out. I mean, look, they even got the animated tiles from the arcade game for the clouds and everything here. I mean, how good does this look, really, in the end for a Sega Master System game? Super impressive. It's just too bad that the gameplay just isn't there. It's bad. It is not good. And I'm going to spoil this. I'm not going to win at the end on this bonus level. And I should have. I don't know what happened, but that last star, my timing was just slightly off, so we've got this. Anyway, Mission 2. We're going to have just one level, and this time it's the train level. They cut out the beginning of the train level from the arcade game, which had a lot of verticality in it, which just, as you can tell, really no verticality in this one. But once again, we've got, some split-screen parallax through raster effects here, and it looks really good. Not too far off the arcade version, which I'll show you them together, once we get past the end here. I mean, enemy placement is obviously very different, and you usually don't see more than one enemy on the screen at a time in this version, but still, on the whole, visually super impressive, right? What I love is you can even throw stars way faster than in Sega Master System Shinobi. But Master System Shinobi, despite not looking as impressive as this, plays way better than this game does. I mean, this is an admirable effort, though. I mean, it really is. Now, what's not coming through clearly is just how hard this game is. The collision detection is kind of terrible. Anything that gets anywhere near you will register as a hit. Very often it's unfair. And there I was using the dog, if you didn't see. But the collision detection very often is unfair. And you really are not even touched by the thing that got you. And then here I am using ninja magic, and even the voice sample's not bad. The way you use the dog, by the way, is you gotta get near an enemy, hold down, and then the ninja magic icon slowly becomes a dog, and then if it's in range of an enemy, you can press attack and it'll get him. So, here's our second boss. I don't know why you bow before every boss in this version. In the arcade one, it was only before the final boss. And you'll notice that all the boss areas on this are just one screen. There's no scrolling, so they're a lot more cramped than the arcade original. And while I'm making this look pretty easy, I probably died 1,000 times on this boss fight getting it figured out. Because the train gets closer and closer until your final hit. When the final hit, it stops, and when it stops, it starts shooting the fireballs out at you very fast. And then, hey, look at this. It borrowed a bonus round from the Genesis game to shake things up. And bonus rounds like this one are not in the arcade version of Shadow Dancer at all. This one was borrowed from the Genesis version of the game. Kind of strange that they included it, but it's cool. And again, we've got some very nice split-screen raster effects here for all the scrolling. It's super impressive. Now, it's not a ton of fun because Shinobi here, he slowly makes his way towards the bottom of the screen, and it gets real hard to hit these guys. But you know what? Spoiler alert for this one, I actually finish this one and get the extra life. But yeah, I mean, there's so much going on here. I mean, this looks way better than the average 8-bit game on this section, doesn't it? I mean, I think it does. And here we are, sticking the landing. And before you ask, no, you don't get an extra life in this version like you do on the Genesis if you don't hit any enemies at all. It just ends and you fail. Alright, so here's our lone stage from Mission 3. We're in the sewers. We've got the giant alligators or crocodiles. I think they're alligators, right? Whatever. And we've got our multiple layers to jump up and down. One thing I didn't mention on the train level is you have to be on the same level at the same height to hurt the enemies there. It's really only a problem in that stage. It doesn't really affect things in this one. I mean, you've got to be even with the enemies. But on the train, it looks like you can hit them in places where you can't. Here, that's not the case. Now, versus the arcade version, I mean, there's way less going on here than there is in that one. Again, at the end of this, I'll show you a brief little comparison of this level in both. But yeah, all these sprites, I mean, everything looks so good. They're so close to having a great game here. But I'm sure they had, a very low budget and very tight time constraints to make this. Still, what they managed to accomplish is just incredible in a lot of ways. And here is our boss here, which works a little bit different than the arcade version, but it's very similar still. They grab the books and they throw them at you, and then they come down and you gotta shoot them to, take the boss out and get him out of your way. You have to shoot them while their little barrier in front of them is down. So we take out that boss, and then we're back to the bonus round that's more similar to the arcade version. One thing you probably also have noticed is most of this game, the screen is updating at about 30 frames a second. On these bonus rounds, it looks like most of it's actually going at 60. Not the animation of the background, of course, but look at the movement of the stars and when you move your hands around. So they're using a combination of different things here. And once again, what was probably the very last one manages to get me is my timing is just slightly off. Oh well. So here we are in Mission 4, and this is the last level. We're at the end. And this one is quite a bit different than the arcade original. Those ninjas, you pretty much just gotta walk under them. Just make sure your timing is good, because that collision detection is super wonky, and it's very easy for them to kill you. I like that guy there, like in The Simpsons, where Bart and Lisa are in that episode where I'm just gonna do this, and they swing their arms around or kick their legs up, and if you get in my way and get hit or kicked, it's not my fault. That's exactly what those ninjas were doing up there. Now this level, visually, not as much going on, so not as impressive as most of the other levels in the game up to this point. I mean, but the characters still look great. Here's a different magic. So the magics, I mean, well, they are different. They all look kind of similar. It's mainly just some colors that change around the whole thing here. There's another ninja bouncing his way away from me. Here we are getting close to that shuttle. And you can see we do have some sprite flicker at points in this game, but there were a whopping 2 enemies on screen there. They were, of course, not on the same horizontal line, because that would have been too much with the size of these characters. And here we go, heading into the boss fight. This is it. Pretty much the same boss as the arcade. The setting is a little bit simpler, definitely doesn't look quite as good. This boss works differently. In the arcade, you pretty much just had to wait it out. In this one, you have to shoot all these little weird baby ninja things they fling at you to get rid of the shield to end phase 1 of the fight. And after that, you've got to walk kind of close and then back off and turn around and throw a bunch of stars at him. One other thing I'll note, you may be wondering why I'm not using ninja magic, on the bosses here, and that's because you can't in this version. Magic is disabled during boss fights. Why? I don't know. Sega hates you. Anyway, we're just about done here. And again, I want to stress, that looked easy, but I died on that a lot of times getting it figured out on how to do it right. But here, check this out. Now it scrolls over. Look how smooth everything is here. We've got our silky smooth scrolling for the launch of the space shuttle that comprises, most of the game's ending here. And this ending, very similar to the arcade original. There I am with my trusty little pooch. And here is the staff that worked on this game, and it is laughably small. So all the impressive stuff we're seeing here, I mean, it's all the work of just a few people. I only wish they had been given maybe more time, maybe a little more staff, and a little more budget, just to see what they really could have put together here, and how they could have improved this and made this a good game from a gameplay standpoint. Alright, let's wrap this up. And that's SMS Shadow Dancer. That's it. The whole thing. It looks really good in a lot of ways with huge sprites, lots of animation, lots of faux parallax backgrounds, and nifty effects. But the gameplay is just atrocious. I mean, there's bad, and then there's SMS Shadow Dancer. When it comes to play mechanics, this game is just a real stinker. Still, it was a super interesting game to play through thanks to its wildly ambitious technical aspects. And you know what? That's it this week. I'm sorry to pick on the Sega Master System so often, my fellow SMS fans. I really do love the system, I promise. It's got some of my favorite 8-bit games. But it's also got some truly awful ones. But for the next complete trash, which probably will be sometime towards the end of March, I promise to pick something that's not a Sega Master System, nor Amiga game. And that'll do it for this video, my retro gaming friends. If you enjoyed it, please toss it a like and share it. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you'll know when my next video comes out. If you want to support the work I do here, you can do that at Patreon or Ko-fi with links to follow and also in the description. With that, I'll say thanks for watching, and see me later.